Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 5 of online learning. This is Mrs. Albert. I will be presenting your reading instruction this week. Before we get started, please make sure that you have a piece of paper and a pencil just in case you feel the need to write any notes down or write any of the information that I will be sharing with you. Our learning targets this week, it's to determine a theme of a poem using details from the text. Also, at the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain differences between poems, as well as refer to the elements, the structural elements of a poem. So, the genre that we're going to be working with, and again, genre, just as a brief reminder, is the type of stories that we're going to be reading are poetries. Specifically, we're going to be talking about two different types of poems. The first poem is a free verse. Um, if you're asking my opinion, free verse is a little bit harder to read, but a free verse poem does not use rhyme and it doesn't typically have patterns. It can vary in length of lines, stanzas, and subjects. A lyric poem is the one that you are going to be more familiar with. Lyrics are found mostly in songs, the lyrics of a song. Um, they are similar to a free verse. They have stanzas. They are usually told from the poet's point of view. It talks about their feelings or their thoughts. It doesn't tell a story, but it shares a poet's state of mind and perceptions. The big difference between a lyric poem and a free verse poem is a lyric poem rhymes, whereas a free verse poem does not. Our comprehension skill for the week is a review of theme. You've heard this many times throughout the year, but a quick reminder about what theme is. Theme is a message or a lesson that the author wants you to take away from a story. So, what did the characters learn? How did the characters grow? And listed on the left are some common themes that we find in poems, in songs, and within stories. At the end of reading our text today, we are going to use this graphic organizer to help us determine the theme of one of the poems that we read. I have honesty in here as an example. If we were reading a text and you were to tell me that honesty was the theme of the story we just read or the poem, I would ask you to go back into the text and find specific details that could support that. So often, ladies and gentlemen like to say the theme is such and such, but they need evidence to support that. And we are going to work on that today within our reading skills. The first poem that we're going to read today is called How Do I Hold the Summer? We are going to be reading 3 different poems, and I'm going to be switching back and forth between the readings and the slides, just kind of to go over the poems and how we know what kind of poems they are. So, again, before we get started, please keep in mind you're going to be talking about theme. You are going to be thinking about the 2 differences between a lyric poem and a free verse poem. I am going to ask you to help me figure out how do I know what kind of poem I'm reading today. Okay, so we're going to head over and we are going to start with How Do I Know the Summer? Before I get started, I always tell everybody take a look at some of your text features here. In the title, How Do I Hold the Summer? I take a look at the pictures and I begin to think in my mind, okay, looks kind of warm. The colors on the trees show me that the season may be fall, but the title says summer. So, what is it that the poem's sharing with us today?
Genre, poetry. How do I hold the summer? The sun is setting sooner now, my swimsuit's packed away. How do I hold the summer fast, or ask it please to stay? The lake like cold, forbidding glass, the last sailboat has crossed. Green leaves, gone gold, fall, float away. Here's winter's veil of frost. I thought of ice and barren limbs, last winter's snow so deep. I know I cannot ball up light, and green grass just won't keep. So I'll search for signs of summer, hold memories of each, soft plumes of brown pressed in a book, the pit of one ripe peach, each instance of a cricket's chirp and every bird's sweet call, and store them up in a poem to read when snow begins to fall.
So
Maya
one
Jones.
So one of the learning targets that we talked about was understanding the structure of poems. So I want you to take a look before I go back to our slides. When we write poems, we use stanzas to help us organize different thoughts and different ideas. So here we have stanza one, and you can see how the four lines are situated together. Here's stanza two, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to be coming back here to take a look at it, but right now I'd like to switch back to our slides. And we're going to discuss the poem. How do I hold the summer? So I asked you while you were listening to think about whether or not it was a lyric or a free verse poem. And since we're kind of just getting started with this, I wanted to make sure you remember the elements of each. So a free verse and a lyric are the two types of poems that we're learning about this week. A free verse shares thoughts and feelings. It has stanzas, but it doesn't have any rhyming words. A lyric poem also has thoughts and feelings. It may have stanzas, but it definitely has rhyming words. Now, if we were together in a classroom, I would throw this up on the whiteboard and I would say to you, how do I hold the summer? I know it's a lyric poem. I want you to go back into the text and I want you to find evidence that this is a lyric poem. Now, remember, we said a lyric poem has thoughts and feelings, it has stanzas, and it has rhyming words. It's the one that reminds us most of a song. So, first, I found rhyming words in How Do I Hold the Summer? Second, I found alliteration, a form of figurative language. I also saw the poet's thoughts and feelings about the season of summer. Finally, these pieces of evidence told me that this was a lyric poem. So let's switch back and let's look for all of those elements within this poem. Stanza 1. I'm going to look at the end words and see if I find any poetry. Now, away, fast, and stay. Okay, away and stay, they're rhyming. If the stanzas are all following the same rhyming pattern, when I move to stanza 2, line 2 and line 4 should also rhyme. Crossed and frost. They do. If they continue to use the same rhyming pattern, I go to stanza 3, lines 2 and 4, deep and keep. Stanza 4, each and peach. And finally, in stanza 5, lines 2 and 4, call and fall. Okay, so right there, I see that it's rhyming. I know that it has stanzas. Let's see if I can go back and find any feelings or thoughts that the poet shares with us. I ask it please to stay. Okay, so right here it's saying, can you please stay? That tells me that this poet likes summer. It doesn't want it to go away. I cannot ball up the light. All right, so they're saying I can't hold on to the light of summer. The green grass, it won't keep. A ripe peach, a bird's sweet call. So all of these elements or words are telling me that the poet is really unhappy to see summer go. And last but not least, we said that we saw alliteration. And if I remember what alliteration is, the same sound used over and over again. Setting sooner, gone gold. I saw some others. Oh, green grass. So, again, all of these features of a lyric poem are evident within How Do I Hold the Summer? The next poem that we're going to read is called Catching a Fly. Now, once again, think about lyric poems versus free verse poems and see if you can identify before we do it together whether it's free verse or whether it's a lyric poem.
Catching a fly. It lighted, uninvited, upon the china plate next to the peas. No hand I raised, nor finger flicked, but rather found a lens. Framed, focused, zoomed in, held the hands. Still the appearance of hands, like two fine threads, caught plotting, planning. Greedy goggle eyes, webbed wings, like me invading. But no time to pause, he'd go. And right at the last, instead of a swat, I snapped. Ken Kynes.
So, if you're like me, I think that Catching a Fly is a lot harder to read as a poem. I really have to sit and think and look through each stanza to understand what the poet is trying to share with me. Let's go back to our slides and see if we can determine whether or not Catching a Fly is a free verse or whether it's a lyric poem. I'm going to head down here. So once again, when I think about what a free verse poem is versus a lyric poem, the big difference is that a lyric poem has rhyming words and a free verse does not. I see here that there are stanzas: stanza 1, stanza 2, stanza 3, stanza 4, stanza 5, and stanza 6. Let's see how we do. Catching a Fly is a free verse poem. If I asked you to reread the poem, would you be able to tell me why? The first thing that I would say is that this poem expresses thoughts and feelings. The next thing I would tell you about Catching a Fly, it has no set rhyming pattern. That's why I found it harder to read. Also, Catching a Fly, well, it has some examples of alliteration, and these pieces of evidence tell me that this is a free verse poem. So once again, we're going to head back to our reading, and I just want to point out a few things. We already went through our stanzas, but look here. Uninvited, plate, peas, no rhyming words, raised, flicked, lens. So none of the stanzas have any rhyming words at the end. I do, however, see some evidence of alliteration, that beginning sound repeating over and over, plotting and planning, greedy goggle, webbed wings. So while this is not my favorite type of poetry, there is a lot of figurative language and thought that has to go into constructing a free verse poem. The last poem is When I Dance, and we're not going to analyze this one, but as you're listening to it, think about, do you hear a poet's thoughts and feelings? Do you see stanzas? Do you hear rhyming words? If you hear rhyming words, right away you should be able to say, aha, I know this is a blank kind of poem.
When I dance. Always want to break out, use my arms and legs to shout. On any dark day that doesn't go exactly my way, I bust a move, get a groove, feet feel the ground. That slap's the only sound, slap, pound. My body needs to charge. I play my tracks, I make it large, to take myself away. Nothing else I need to say. TC.
Okay, so again, I see stanzas. I heard thoughts and feelings. I want to break out. I want to shout. Any dark day doesn't go my way. I want to move. I want to groove. So again, lots of feelings and thoughts in there by the poet. And then I go back to my stanzas and I look for a rhyming pattern: out and shout, day and way, move and groove, sound and pound. Okay, so I see rhyming. That right away tells me that this is a lyric poem. Okay. I'd like to talk about theme next because that is our comprehension skill. And again, just to remind you, theme is the overall lesson of the story. Um, we're going to look at the first poem that we read, and we're going to talk about whether or not we can identify the theme. So, how do I hold the summer? How do I hold the summer fast or ask it please to stay? Think about that. So I'll search for signs of summer and store them up in a poem when snow begins to fall. So while I haven't revealed the theme to you yet, I think about these three details that I have pulled out from our first poem. It says, how do I hold summer fast and ask it please to stay? I'll search for signs of summer everywhere. I'm going to store them up in a poem so when the snow begins to fall, I can pull it out. So, all of these things tell me that the overall message or lesson that the characters are learning is good memories can be saved and revisited by writing them in a poem. So, saving memories would be our theme for how do I hold the summer? Giving it to you again. And here is a piece out of your textbook that just reminds you again is finding evidence within your poems helps you understand A, what you're reading, and B, it makes it easier to look for the theme. After we're finished with our slides, we're going to head into our practice activities. Today's activities, or whenever you get to them on your own time, you're going to see a form. And in your form, you are going to be reading each excerpt from a song. So these are all songs that you are most likely familiar with. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read through the song. It is a lyric poem. I'm going to tell you that, but I probably don't need to. You would have seen the rhyming words and then you would have known it can't be free verse because this has rhyming words. So we're going to be practicing on two different things. We're going to be practicing on reading lyric poems, and then we're going to go back and we're going to practice how to determine the theme in that lyric poem based on evidence. So when you go back, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to start with simply reading the poem. After you're finished reading the poem, think about what the theme of the poem or the overall message of the poem is trying to teach you. It can be one or two words, or as you saw in my graphic organizer, I came up with an overall theme, holding on to memories if you write them down. Um, I will tell you that most of these are one word. So after you read it, think about your theme. Maybe you say it's honesty. If you say that this lyric poem is about honesty, give me 3 clues that tell you this is about honesty. And you're going to continue that practice with lyric poem 2 and lyric poem 3. Please know that I have included an answer key. After you do this, open up your answer key and see how you did. It'll really give you a good idea about whether or not you've understood both theme and the genre lyric and free verse poems. Boys and girls, it's great to be back with you again this week. I hope that all of you are safe and doing well. Thank you for continuing on with your learning process with Mr. Ross and Mr. Kukla, Ms. Patel, and myself. If you have any questions, please reach out to your teacher and have a great week.